Again, Simon, thank you so much for giving up your early Sunday morning to be here with us and share your work and all your insight with us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
Where can people get, before we move on, where can people get your books currently?
Well, the current book, you can order it from anywhere, Amazon, etc. But the current book is probably, I'm not sure, but it may actually be being shut down now because the publisher obviously the publisher's waiting for me to finish editing on the new one. I would advise, if anybody's going to buy one of my books, to buy the new one now, because basically the old one's out of date, and the new one is much thicker, better value for money. It's going to be also available in hardback, and there's going to be more pictures, and obviously, hopefully, a few of the pictures will make people think and realise that things are not what they seem. There are other things available. You can obviously buy, that's separate from me, that's a DVD where I did a TV show for an hour. That's available, which obviously you can see the pictures in colour on there. Mm-hmm. Not the pictures, though, that are going in the new book, because obviously this is all new stuff to come. But the new book is out, hopefully, in March.
I'm going to have to pick that one up at... I love, pictures, like they say, one picture's worth 1,000 words.
Well, you can go on my Facebook page, The Two-Faced Moon by Simon Lewis, and obviously follow me on there. It's a relatively new page, but it's doing quite well. So, obviously, I put pictures on there all the time, and I share other society stuff, because obviously we all like to share each other's stuff and work together to make people more aware. So I obviously follow the subject of space. Obviously Apollo, anything related, aircraft, etc. So more on the secret side and unknown than anything else.
Yeah, your Facebook page has got a ton of photos out there. A lot of things worth taking a few looks at, for sure.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we've over the years we've collected up so many pictures. And I mean, remember, of course, that this is my real job is running a landscaping business. That's what makes me money. This is, you could say, the hobby. So, if I was doing this full time, I would probably be able to really dissect things on a much bigger level. But I think we're doing. I do get help from others, so we're doing quite well as we are at the moment so far.
Well,
and managing to get that information out there, and I do believe I'm on the right track. I won't say names, but I did meet an astronaut one year, and he said, "Keep up the good work." So that was good to hear. And another astronaut signed some of our work off to say it was correct. So that's always good to get that bit of feedback.
Yes. Well, it's been a big part of your life for many, many years.
Well, yes. I mean, all of this starts from the 80s. I mean, I said to you at the beginning that I think some of us just seem to end up doing this for some reason. I mean, why I want to dissect stuff and look into this in such detail, I don't really know. But every time I do, you unearth another mystery, and you start finding things that clash and don't make sense and don't connect together properly, and you start realizing that things are not what they seem.
Right.
And this is what investigation is about. In if you want to use the term ufology, it is looking into the other side of everything. And as we know these days, you can quite openly talk about ufology, as we are now. Obviously not quite ufology because we're talking about the Apollo program in another way, but people are freer to talk without being ridiculed. And of course, I was saying to you just before the break that really the people in charge have to really start revealing a few things, because their main enemies are digital technology, digital cameras, digital this and digital that. They record almost perfect pictures now. All of these UFO sightings you see, apart from, obviously the annoying thing on YouTube are hoaxes, obviously, but we do see genuine pictures and films, and they're quite clear. And obviously, I think there are explanations and excuses, to basically continue like this, with everything. And there seems to be footage. I mean, YouTube's great, isn't it? Because there does seem to be footage being leaked out, like the Apollo 15 footage that seems to be real, of the Apollo 15 guys on the surface, and you can see the things flying past as they're walking around. That's available now on YouTube if anybody's searching. And, that in itself, whether it's fake or not, I suppose it doesn't really matter, because it puts pressure on for a bit more truth. Going back to what we were discussing earlier, because we were talking about Apollo 11 and a photograph of this object, what I forgot to mention is when we looked at it closer, it was more like a disc shape, although you could have been looking at it head on, and it was, it could even be a cigar shape. It certainly wasn't a delta shape or a typical sort of landing shape like the eagle, or with things hanging off it. Nice and smooth, very clean. And this brings me on to some more pictures which will appear in the book, which is Apollo 15. And this probably connects with the film that's on YouTube. It was interesting that somebody sent me some pictures again, and there's 3 frames, and the 2 astronauts are on the surface. And just to remind everybody of all the astronauts on Apollo 15 mission, it was David R. Scott, Alfred M. Ward, and James B. Irwin. So Irwin, he's on the surface there, and I don't know where the other astronaut is. He must be in the background somewhere. And he takes these photographs, and at first sight, when you look at this hill, on the first frame, you see a speck, and immediately you think, well, it'll be just dirt. And this is interesting, because most people will look at photographs and say, oh, it's just a bit of dirt. But what's interesting is there's 2 more frames, and this thing's turning round on the hill. And as it turns, it's a delta shape. Interesting delta. First time I've seen a delta shape on a moonshot. So you can clearly see, which is in the book, a delta shape. And first thing that comes to people's minds is they don't need a delta shape on the moon, because there's no gravity, there's no wind, breeze, etc. But that depends where it came from, doesn't it? If it come from Earth, it could have quite easily been one of the famous triangular shaped things. But it's just very interesting that you've got this thing there, which is obviously turning as whether or not he's photographing the hill or that environment on the moon for another reason and hasn't noticed it, I don't know. But if I was on the moon and I was looking for things, I would certainly, because it is quite big. So it's fascinating, all these pictures, which most of us will write off as a speck of dust, actually could turn out to be something else. There's so many pictures out there where a blob could easily be a misprint, but yet at the same time could easily be something else, which is actually on the film. There's another shot of Apollo 15, and I don't think I'm putting this photograph in the book because I want to investigate it more, but they've taken a shot of a hill again, but on the ground, there's 2 frames which show like a round thing coming over the hill, and then the next minute, it's on the ground in the distance, sat there. Perfectly round sphere type shape. So the reason I've got to check that out is because, of course, it could be an error on the photograph. Because I don't like to put things in a book if I'm not sure about them. Because obviously the whole objective is to try and get the correct pictures out there for everybody to look at, without turning around and saying, "Oh, that's a blob of misprint on the film."
Let them make their own decision. Simon, we've got to take another quick break for our other stations. Our guest tonight, or this morning, if you're in the UK, is lunar expert. I'm going to call him that, Simon Lewis. It's an honor to have him here on the show. And we'll be back in just a couple of minutes with this quick break. You're listening to Fringe Radio. Check us out at fringeradioshow.com. We'll be right back with Simon. All right, everybody, welcome back to Fringe Radio. Our guest tonight is Simon Lewis. Again, Simon, I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing all this with us. I've got a question for you. You know, Apollo 17, and this we got several questions emailed in, and Apollo 17, of course, by all historical records, was the last moon shot, the last Apollo mission. Do you believe there were more after 17?
Well, this is interesting, actually, because, of course, they were supposed to have cancelled Apollo 18 and 19. There's rumours that they continued, because, of course, I'm sure we've all seen the Apollo 20 supposed film on YouTube. Do you know that?
No, I do not.
Well, there's some film on YouTube of an Apollo, Apollo 20 mission, and they've discovered this alien craft, and they're recovering the body, which then they are doing an autopsy on in the spacecraft. I know it sounds absolutely amazing, or not believable, but it's on the internet and causing a lot of arguments of whether it's real or not. And that's Apollo 20. The problem we've got these days is, of course, I was mentioning digital technology and computer technology, is, you know, we're really reaching the point where you can produce something and it looks real, and it's only being produced on a computer screen. So I don't know if it is real or not, but it's out there and it's causing a lot of debate. As for Apollo 18 and 19, I don't really know, because all the time I'm asking a simple question. The other space program, they don't need to use rockets. They've got the technology to fly out the atmosphere without rocket power. It's very difficult. You know, all the research I do, and it's a lot, and with others, of course, you know, we're all faced with these nightmare questions, because we come to these dead ends, and always at these dead ends, they must have something else, because it doesn't make sense otherwise.
Right.
It's almost like the show must go on, but only the show that's the fake in the public eyes. The other show is top secret, and very top secret, of course, because obviously, as you know, we don't need to go into detail of all these secret bases on our world, but you know, they're certainly secret. So it's always going to be a difficult one. You know, computer technology does make it difficult to know what's true or false these days. So anyway, if anybody hasn't seen that, there is the supposed Apollo 20 footage, and I believe somebody did write a book about the whole thing, and it's film as well. It's not photographs. You've got them actually flying over the top of this spacecraft, which is massive, and then the next minute they've got a body on board and they're doing an autopsy.
Is that the one? It looks like a mummy of some sort.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I did. There, you know, I've seen. I get so much stuff sent to me.
Mona Lisa, they call it.
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't know if, you know, for me, really, it doesn't. As a researcher, you can't take something like that to face value unless you know the background.
Right. What do you think about these? What do you think about these structures on the moon? The one that I get a lot of emails about, and I've had different guests on talk about this massive tower that looks kind of like the Washington Monument on the moon. But when you use Google Moon, or you try to look at different NASA photos, it's always hazed out.
Well, yeah, I totally believe that, you know, there are structures there, without a doubt. I mean, I've met people who've worked on the program, and they've all said to me there's all sorts there. That's the whole objective of the space program, you know, to go and have a look at everything. And space programs, of course. I mean, I must point out, of course, that, you know, I refer to the USA all the time, because everybody else is involved now. You know, you've got India, China, Russia, you know, France and the UK. Everybody wants a bit of the action now. And this is going to open up a whole new area of interest. I do wonder, though, if they're all signing the same agreement, don't say anything. It's even like when China went to the moon, a load of pictures were coming back which didn't make sense. And next minute, they're doing what everybody else does, not saying anything.
Well, let me ask you this. With all your research that you've done, do you believe that there was a civilization there? Do you believe that maybe at one time there was some sort of an atmosphere? Of course not.
I believe there was, yes.
At one time?
Yeah, at one time. Whether or not there may even still be some form of atmosphere within the craters. Like I said, we don't see the other side of the moon. You know what I mean? I know we see pictures of like thousands of craters, but that doesn't mean anything. It's the evidence just point. I mean, everybody argues about the astronauts when they went to the moon because, they all say they look like they were working a lot harder than they were supposed to be. And everybody argues over the rover about the way it flicks the dust up and it immediately hits the ground. So, that's where the hoax side of it comes in, because everybody says, well, they can't be on the moon if it's coming down so quickly. But I think what everybody's got to remember about that, the moon dust is it is quite heavy, but also just because we're told the gravity's so and so doesn't mean it's exactly like that. I know everybody likes to say the flag's waving in the wind, but we all know that's a spring mechanism. But there is solar wind. There's loads of those things to counter and indicate, and it's like the chronological reported lunar events indicates that the moon, is alive and there are things happening on it. And, this brings us to technology available for home use now, like telescopes. Everybody's got these incredible digital telescopes now, with these cameras fitted. And I've seen some pictures my friends have done. They're incredible. They're right on the surface of the moon. And if you were to go back in the 90s, I know people would have had home telescopes, probably quite good then, but this digital technology really is clear and sharp, and it really captures everything. So I think they've got a job on their hands if they're going to try and hide stuff. But it goes back, we're talking about structures. One of the most interesting discussed phenomena, this is 1950s, was the artificial bridge. I don't know if you've heard about this.
No, I haven't.
It was the late John O'Neill. He's a former science editor of the New York Herald Tribune. He caused the biggest stir in lunar observations back in July 1953 when he reported what he called a gigantic artificial arch, 12 miles long, and it was known as the Lunar Bridge. This was confirmed by another famous doctor, H.P. Wilkins, who worked at the Mount Wilson Observatory, USA. And amazingly, when they went back to photograph this same area, the whole structure had gone. And these are big people at the time. So it's fascinating. You're talking about structures, and then we've got this structure, a bridge, that suddenly is there 1 minute and gone the next. So obviously, observations, observations these days are in their thousands. YouTube again, or wherever on the internet, people are filming, photographing the moon like never before, and they're all capturing things, like unusual objects. This is when we've got past all the problems where people sometimes photographed particles on the end of the lens, or even an airliner can be confused.
Sure.
As it passes. Once we're past that stage, these people have taken some pretty good shots. Quite amazing.
You want to take a call?
Yes, fine, yes.
All right. Caller, hold on. Caller, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk. You are on with Simon Lewis.
Hello. I happen to have a fairly good background that gives me some knowledge about the moon, and I had some reactions to, even though I've been only listening a short time tonight, I've heard some things that deserve answers. The old idea of the bridge on the moon, that was something that was publicized back in the days before we had spacecraft photography of the moon, and the reason that it doesn't appear when you look at it with better quality information is that it was simply not there to begin with. It was easy to imagine you're seeing things at the limits of visibility. When you're looking at the moon through a telescope, you have a kilometer or two resolution. But the short and universal answer to any inquiry about supposed structures on the moon is the fact that not only the U.S., but several other nations have in recent years sent orbiters around the moon that have mapped it out in great detail. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter in particular, once it is referred to and such, you have a latitude and longitude and location for these things, then all you have to do is check it out and see what's there. And I think that that's something that anybody who's interested in this general subject should avail themselves of. It's a free online resource, and the heritage of knowledge that we've been gathering in recent years is there for all of us to make use of.
I agree. Simon, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, that's brilliant actually, and that's valid information about the phenomenon of the 1950s artificial bridge, because obviously there's a good explanation there for that. And everything else is great because people need to, find out these things and study them more. The thing I must point out is the reason I do this is because I've met people who've worked in these different areas, but they tell me a different story. So I analyse everything in detail. So maybe the bridge is, as you've explained, obviously a mistake because of the type of telescope or technology at the time, but it doesn't change the fact that conversations mention structures, and a lot of these conversations are not for the public domain. So, but what was said then was very valid, very good. I like that sort of thing.
Yeah, the light and shadow can play tricks on you, and when you're seeing something a little fuzzy and full of a turbulent atmospheric effects as we do from Earth, then it's not surprising that even in the early maps done with the benefit of telescopic observations, you see numerous minor details at the limits of visibility that when you look at the later lunar orbiter and later generations just aren't there. And one thing I would like to mention about some of these so-called investigators of lunar anomalies is they are uniformly hostile to pointing out such resources as I have done. And what is common is that they'll claim that all the evidence contrary to their ideas has to be faked. And I think that's a logical backing yourself into a corner that people need to be aware of and to beware of.
Yes, yeah. I think actually, you're quite right actually, everybody should have a voice and all opinions and all information out there. I was talking about the hoax thing and saying I don't believe it, but it doesn't mean that people out there can't follow what they believe in.
Well, people have a right to believe that they can jump off a cliff and fly if they want. I mean, it's a free universe in that regard. But the idea that the moon landing was faked is such a ridiculous thing, as is the idea that there were missions after Apollo 17. It's so ridiculous. Keeping something like a voyage to the moon secret.
There was Apollo 18 and 19. The Apollo 20, which is this film that's turned up on the internet, is, like I've said, we just don't know because nobody's stepping forward to say it's a fake.
Well, we do know because there were no missions to the moon after Apollo 17, and the so-called video is clearly faked. In one of those, they show this spaceship half buried in this elongated thing in this crater.
Right,
it's clearly a model that somebody made.
Yes,
When you compare it with the actual photography of the area, it just doesn't add up. So there's a lot of fakers and hoaxers out there we have to be aware of, and just knowing the history.
Challenge these days. I mean, YouTube, obviously, we keep mentioning YouTube, is a minefield of fakes at the moment, and it's a real problem. I mean, obviously, I believe in what I believe, and I'm investigating what I investigate, but it's created huge problems because so many people are faking and sometimes putting on things which are, quite well faked. It takes time off, it creates confusion, and it creates a mountain of problems.
Well, it does show that the majority of that stuff is fake. I think that can be established by the quality of what they show. And the moon is a fascinating place in its own right, and it doesn't really need the fiction and fantasy to be laid over it to be interested. The idea that there are big towers on the moon or glass domes or fortresses, all of that can be disproved just by looking at go online to Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and look for their quick map and see for yourself.
I got to take a quick commercial break. Appreciate the call.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Simon, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back for our final segment. Our guest tonight, Simon Lewis. Stick around. We've got a little more to talk about. All right, we're back with researcher and author Simon Lewis. His new book is coming out in March called The Moon That Hides a Secret. It's going to be exciting to get that one out there, Simon.
Yes, I think it is, and it's always interesting, like the lovely gentleman you just had on the radio show. It's always interesting to hear other people's views and opinions. It's very important. But the book is generally what has been researched, and it's like like I said to you, it's like a crime investigation scene. All the parts of the jigsaw have been joined together to put across to everybody as the evidence stands. And it's quite interesting, really, because we were talking a minute ago about hoaxes and things, etc. Now, I don't know if you know of the film For All of Mankind.
No.
This was a film by Al Reinert. He was the producer of Apollo 13. Now, that's supposed to be the best documentary ever made of the moon landings. So they put together something and produced this film, which would have been aired on all the television channels at the time and then put onto DVD, which it is now. And what I was fascinated about it is that it's brilliant. I mean, he's a brilliant guy. Actually, I asked him via email a question about the whole film. He obviously knows what I do. And he was saying to me that a lot of the Apollo footage wasn't the voice side of it, the dubbing wasn't that good, so they could only use it from a few missions. So that means that, I'll give you an example, on YouTube you have a piece of footage from this film, and it shows you two astronauts going down this hill, and it says they're singing, and it's Apollo 17. But actually it isn't. It's Apollo 16, and they weren't singing. So what they did is they didn't use the correct dubbing with the footage. So whatever you're watching isn't true. So everybody thinks it is who don't look carefully. So you've got 100,000+ people on just one YouTube site thinking that shot of them going down the hill is Apollo 17 and the singing. And it's actually not correct.
Right.
And this just shows you, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a masterpiece of filming. It is brilliant, I love it. But it just shows you that, everybody out there, a large percentage, think it's actually word for word exact with the colour film, when it isn't. So it's the wrong dubbing with the wrong film. So interesting. But would you believe it? I mean, this is it's just amazing, this subject. Because, obviously, he was lovely, this guy. He replied and he was straight about it. Lovely guy. It led me on to start looking at other footage. And then I started realising, hold on a minute, there's another version of them going down the hill. And then I found another version. So there we are, 4 versions of them going down this hill to the house rock, I think they referred to it as the Apollo 16. And so there I'm trying to work out which one's the right one. Right. So we went then to the NASA site, obviously, surely they've got the correct version on. And theirs doesn't seem to be correct, because there's a video out saying that this is the correct version. And it's like, oh my goodness, which one's the correct version? Were they saying those words? But it's interesting, because then we continued looking at more footage, and it was even worse. It's like, I can find 3 versions of another. And it goes on and on and on. And I'll be briefly mentioning this in the book. I can't really go into detail, because really it's down to everybody to look at all these films themselves, YouTube, NASA sites, etc., etc. And then they'll start realising that there's like hundreds of DVDs out there for sale, and they're not even dubbed correctly.
Well, you could spend hours. You know what? You want to take another call?
I'll have another call, yeah, fine.
Let's do another one. Caller, good evening. Welcome. You are on with Simon Lewis.
Simon Lewis, man. Hey, this is Harv.
Good evening.
You guys.
Hey, Harv, what's going on?
This guy sounds so humble.
He is.
And he's not trying to push an agenda. He's just bringing up ideas and questions. Thank God. Isn't that what we need to do?
Well, yeah, it's to take a look at everything and make some decisions on your own, you know.
Then we can all get together and figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
What was the last Apollo, you guys? What, 12, 14,
I'm having difficulty hearing what you're saying.
The last Apollo, what was it, 16, correct?
17.
17, sorry. It's been a long day.
I should have known.
But there are hoax-type films out there that show, 20 and different things. But
Well, yes, I know the other gentleman said hoax, but it hasn't been proven a hoax yet.
Right.
Yeah, so it's an Apollo 20 film out there. Obviously, all I'm saying is it's available for people to look at, and like you rightly said, they can make their own decisions.
Don't you think
Apollo 18 and 19, I haven't found anything to indicate there was Apollo 18 and 19. But apart from this Apollo 20, I mean, you've got to remember this Apollo 20 film, somebody's written a book about it.
Right.
So, obviously, it's attracted a lot of attention. But I don't know any more than that. Apollo 17, if you want to look at this in perspective, was the final mission where you actually had an archaeologist, which was Jack Smith, of course. So you've got to remember all the Apollo missions, that they're all military trained under military rules.
Absolutely.
But it was great to have somebody...
And that means that you have to have secret skills. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's probably, out of all the missions, that's probably a very important factor. And of course, on Apollo 17, they did find the orange soil, which is,
that means iron.
About the moon being all grey.
Yeah.
It's a difficult, it's very difficult because they say the moon's grey, yet you can go out there. I've got probably about 100 books on the moon, and I'm fascinated when I look at them all. They're all different, the pictures. You can get the same picture 30 times, and I don't know which one's the correct one in terms of colouring.
Heck, I don't know neither, brother. I really don't. Iron oxide is oxygen. That's all there is to it. And, sorry. Well, I'm trying to overtalk you. I just wanted to say, I really care about what you're saying, because I think there's more out there. We've been talking about it for, 40 years now?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that there's something going on. I just don't know what.
Well, there's plenty of evidence that you have to take a look at, and guys like Simon are the ones that are putting it out there for us. Hey, thanks for calling in,
sorry
brother.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine as always.
Hey, listen.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen, don't you?
What?
Sooner or later, we're going to find out.
Hopefully in our lifetime.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, I wouldn't bet on that. I'd bet against Secretariat. So, there you go. That's what an idiot I am.
All right, Harvey. Thanks for calling.
Yeah,
Hey, man. Yeah.
No, it's true. It's people, they need to take a look. And like you said, the hoaxes, it's a shame because all the hoaxing takes the credibility of the good researchers that are trying to put something out. It's kind of sad that it's soared so far out of control, Simon.
Well, it's the other thing you've got to take into account is that like the guy who directed For All of Mankind, he did point out that a lot of the dubbing isn't that good quality from the missions, and so they only really had a small amount of missions to choose from, of which they had to then make up this video, which was obviously not in correct order of wording or words being spoken. So that was done professionally, but at the same time it's the same problem all the others have. So you're not really representing everything properly. It's annoying really, because if you've got 100,000 people thinking that Apollo 17 astronauts were singing down a hill, then we've got a nightmare on our hands.
Right.
What a mountain to climb to say to people, oh, hang on a minute, that was just a documentary with the wrong dubbing on, because they had to do it that way. They weren't tricking anybody.
Right. What do you think about? We've got a few minutes left, Simon, and you got to get to bed because you've been up late. What do you think about Ralph Renee's book, NASA Mooned America?
Now, interestingly, I've not actually read that book. Can you fill me in?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, well, no, it's one of the first. It was published in 1992, a self-published book about how the Apollo missions were a fake, and how he talks about.
Oh, right, yes, sorry, right. Yeah, I know which ones are. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't really follow any of these books which talk about it as a fake. The gentleman before, I quite agree with him that it's almost ridiculous to think they faked it, because the whole world's watching, and I think the key player in this was the USSR, and they would have said something by now, because of course obviously relationships are up and down, aren't they?
Right.
So they would have said something, and I've taken pictures of the moon landings to professional companies, and they just look at me and say, well, so what? It doesn't prove anything about the lighting. And, I really did take a lot of pictures, and, I said, oh, right, okay, so you don't think they're hoaxed? And they said, well, it doesn't prove anything. Right. The pictures don't prove anything. More than anything is we've got to be looking at what the pictures are hiding more than anything else. Are they hiding shadows of something or something hovering? Are they smudging out things so you can't see certain things? The gentleman just before mentioned there's no evidence on all these later photographs. Well, there won't be evidence, because if they're going to hide things, they'll make sure they're well removed. I'd be interested in this. If we all sent our own probe to the moon, it'd be interesting to see if we had a free hand.
Yeah.
Because everything has to be checked. And we do know, of course, that the NASA, the NSA was very heavily involved with the Apollo program. So if they're involved, they're experts at keeping secrets.
Exactly.
This is what always fascinates me. For all of mankind, did Neil Armstrong say. But what he missed out there was, for certain people in mankind, not the rest of us,
right.
just for those few. You know, it's almost infuriating. I wouldn't do this if it wasn't so obvious there was some game being played here.
Do you think?
But going back to the book you just talked about and the hoax, etc. I just think that I just don't think the evidence is strong enough. You know, because you've got all these conversations that the astronauts are having on the moon about unusual activity and things that they're looking at. So why are they saying all of this? If it's all filmed on Earth, why bother saying all of this?
Exactly.
You know, and I mean, not a lot of people realise that when the astronauts came back from the moon, you know, they're not just quarantined for alien germs that they might have picked up. They were also quarantined to make sure that they were still sane. Because I think, what an achievement to have these three guys to sit on the end of a rocket, blast off not knowing if you're coming back, and then be faced with everything else. You know, whether or not it was staged, we don't really know. But certainly there was somebody else there.
Yeah.
Damn heroes is what I say.
Exactly. Simon, I want to thank you for taking the time this morning to be with us. His new book is going to be coming out called The Moon That Hides a Secret. And the best place to follow you is on Facebook. And I hope that we can get you on again. I know, and I want to thank you for staying up to the wee hours of the morning to do this program.
Problem.
But
I've enjoyed this. Yeah, thank you for inviting me to come on the show.
It was an honor to have you here, my friend. So take care.
You.
Have a good 2015, and we will stay in touch.
Okay, thank you. You take care.
Okay, Simon. Good night.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Simon Lewis.